and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I'm Dave, and this is another one of those I just show you how to play something videos. I get a few requests for these because in other videos I tend to go into depth about music theory and whatnot, and sometimes particularly sort of more towards the beginner end of the scale. People just want something they can play. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you a chord progression, but talk a little bit about how the chords in it relate to each other, and hopefully that'll give you something. So as well as just playing this progression for what it is, you can actually have that as a starting point for going off and creating your own chord progressions and actually writing and being creative. Right, so play the chord progression through one time so you can hear how it sounds, and then I'll show you how to play it and talk a bit about what the chords are that's actually in there. Okay, now it might have sounded like there was quite a lot going on there, but there's actually only really sort of three chords that we're playing. We're in the key of D major. Now the first thing you need to know is in a major key, the first chord of the key, the fourth and the fifth are always going to be major chords. So what does that mean in the key of D major? Well, the notes in the key of D major are D, E, F sharp, G, A, B and C sharp, and then that brings you back to D. If you're not so familiar with scales, don't worry too much about that, just take it as read that that's the notes in the key of D major. So the first, fourth and fifth notes in the scale there are D, G and A. So the chords we're going to be playing are basically D major, G major and A major. There's a few little variations on those chords, I'll get into those, but basically that's the three chordal sounds in any key. First, fourth and fifth chords are always going to be major. If you're not familiar with the notes in scales, or you want to try this in other keys, I'll talk a little bit later about how you can use PhatPhish to help you with that. Okay, so we're in the key of D major and we're starting on a D major chord. And if you've been playing for a little while, it's a chord shape you're probably already familiar with. It's this one. And we're just playing the top 5 strings. So we've got an A, a D, an A, a D, and an F sharp. Because D, F sharp and A, those three notes together will give you the D major chord. We don't play the bottom E string because E doesn't belong in a D major chord, so we're just playing the top 5 strings. So playing that chord through. So yeah, I was twiddling on doing some single notes, but don't worry too much about that. Just think about for now what the actual chords are. Playing a D major, and then what I do for the second chord is I actually take this middle finger off the second fret on the top E string and just play an open E string. Okay, so that chord hasn't got an F sharp in anymore, it's got an E, it's got a D, an E and an A. That chord there is actually called D sus2. Don't worry about what sus2 actually means. This video is not about getting into the guts of music theory, it's just about showing you things you can play. Basically, that shape is a D major, that shape is a D sus2. It's got its own distinctive sound, so that's the D major chord, that's a D sus2, but it's still some kind of D major chord, it's still based on a D major. So it's D sus2, so we'll play the D major chord through, and then we'll play the D sus2 chord through, then we'll come back to the D major chord, and then the fourth chord, we change it again by bringing a little finger down onto the third fret on the top E string to give us a G. So again, it's not a D major chord anymore, it's some other kind of chord. We haven't got an F sharp in there, so it can't be a D major, we've got a G. The notes of this chord are G, D, G and A. That chord there is a D sus4. Again, don't worry about what sus4 means, just take it that this chord works in the key and it's got this distinctive sound. You might have come across a sus4 chord before, after it actually D and D sus4 together, something like this. that chord there, with this distinctive sound, is a D sus4. Okay, so our chord progression through is D, D sus2, D, D sus4. Okay, so there's 3 different types of chord, all around a D, because we're in the key of D major, so we're functioning around the D major chords. Next chord up, what we're going to do is take the index finger from the 2nd fret on the 3rd string and put it down at the 2nd fret on the 5th string. We're just going to leave these other fingers where they are, so we're still fretting the 1st and 2nd strings at the 3rd fret, and we're going to have the 3rd and 4th strings open. So this is sort of actually a chord you might have come across before. You might have seen a G major chord played like that, or like that. We're basically playing that, but we're only using the top 5 strings. We're not using the G at the 3rd fret on the bottom E string. Just because some other chords we'll play later, we need the middle finger, and it's going to be a bit awkward to play. So just on the top 5 strings, we've got a B, a D, a G, a D, and a G. And a G, a B, and a D give us the notes of a G major chord. So we'll play that through for a bar, and then the next chord, what we're going to do is middle finger down at the 2nd fret on the 1st string and take the little finger off from the 3rd fret, so we get a chord shape that looks like this. Now I love the sound of that chord. I think it's a really sweet sounding chord. That chord is a G major 7. Don't worry too much about the theory about what is a G major 7 chord. It's a kind of chord that's built on a G major, and G belongs to the key of D major, so that chord there fits into the key, and it sounds nice alongside the other chords. So progression goes like this. How it goes. Now what you'll notice if you look at the chord shapes, that there's actually very little movement from one chord to the other in terms of fingers moving around the neck, and this is something I like to incorporate in chord progressions when I'm writing them, is not sometimes just not to have big jumps, just to have gradual leading by just changing one note, one finger on one string, and gradually transitioning from one chord to the other. So we've got quite a simple transition from the D sus4 to the G major to the G major 7, in the same way that we had a very simple transition from the D to the D sus2 back to the D and the D sus4. Yeah, just simple changes. Again, as a beginner, this is something that can help you by not having to do huge chord, multi-finger chord changes as you go from one chord to another. The next chord in the progression is an A7 sus4, an A dominant 7 sus4, this could be called. Again, don't worry about the names, don't get hung up on them. This is videos just about showing you something that you can play. And the transition from that G major 7 to an A7 sus4 is really quite simple. It's about taking the middle finger off the first string completely and bringing the index finger from the 5th string to the 2nd fret on the 4th string. Oh, that's a nice sounding chord. And for the last chord in the progression, what we're going to do is bring the middle finger down at the 2nd fret on the 2nd string and take the ring finger off. And that's the last chord in the progression. Now when you listen to that, you might think that chord sounds wrong, and it's not wrong. It's just some of the intervals between the notes sound a little bit dissonant. They're not happy, resolved intervals where the chord just wants to stay where it is. And I'm actually using that to my advantage because I want the progression to loop around so I can play it again. So I can go from that A dominant 7 chord back up to a D major chord, which is where I came in, and then the whole progression loops around. So okay, so now you know what the chords are. Let's play that through and annotate that with what chords we're playing. And so on. Now in terms of how this is played, here I'm using my thumb just on the A string, on the 5th string, and my 4 fingers on the top 4 strings, and a little bit of like finger picking. However you want to play it, experiment. So this is really just about showing you an idea, something you can use as a springboard to kind of go off and come up with your own creative ideas. Or instead of just using your fingers, you could delve into your pocket and use a pick and strum the chords. What you've got to remember though is you're not playing the bottom E string at any point. So you're strumming, you need to avoid hitting that string. Two things you could do, you can either be very accurate with your picking and just make sure that when you're strumming the chords, you're missing the bottom E string. That takes a bit of practice. Well, the other thing you can do just kind of help you is if you bring your thumb over the top of the neck and just touch the bottom E string just enough to deaden it so it doesn't ring out. So if you do strike it, it doesn't sound loud next to all the other strings. It kind of deadens it. But yeah, you could play that progression just with a strumming pattern. So experiment. So let's quickly talk about some theory. I don't want to get into the weeds of this, but just kind of give you some context and some ideas that you can kind of expand on. Playing the key of D major. So what we said was in a major key, the 1, 4 and 5 chords, the chords that are built on the 1st, the 4th and the 5th degrees of the scale are major chords. So in the key of D major, we've got D, G and A. Now if you're not familiar with scales, you can use PhatPhish to help you. Fire up your copy of PhatPhish. If you haven't got it, you can download it from the PhatPhish website. There's a link in the information section down there. Get your copy of PhatPhish, put it into scale mode and select major scales and then select the root note. So let's say we want to play something in the key of A major. So set the root note to A and that shows us where all the notes are on the neck for the key of A major. First degree of the scale is A. If you count up from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, it gets you to D, and count up again to 5, it gets you to E. So in the key of A major, we play A major chords, we play D major chords, and we play E major chords. Now, if you've got a decent chord dictionary, or a little bit of knowledge, you possibly know those chords already. If you don't, what you can do is you can put PhatPhish into arpeggio mode. Arpeggio is kind of a fancy way of saying chord. Then select, say you want what kind of chords you want. So we want major chords. Say we want to say the shapes of A major. So select A as your root note, and this is showing you where on the neck all the places where you find notes that belong to the A major chord. And from that you can start to find shapes, and those shapes you can use them in your chord progressions. So you could do that in the key of A. So you could use that for find all the A major chords, find shapes that you could use for that. You could find all the shapes for D major chords, you can find all the shapes for E major chords, all the notes for those chords, and then find the shapes that you can build in order to play them. And there's a little variations like we had in that first progression, like using sus2 chords or sus4 chords. You know, pretty much any way you use a major chord, you can use a sus2 or a sus4. Sometimes the sus4 might sound a little bit odd, but your ears will guide you. If it's an instance where the sus4 doesn't sound quite right, it won't sound right, and you'll know not to use it. Likewise, that we had a major 7 chord in there. You can use a major 7 type chord on the first chord of the key or the fourth chord of the key. Probably won't sound so good on the fifth, but if we're playing in the key of A major, we've got A major, we've got A sus2, A sus4, or we've got A major 7. And again, PhatPhish will show you like major 7 arpeggios, find the notes of those chords, and you can start to formulate shapes with which to play them. And like that 7 chord, that dominant 7 chord, it's different to a major 7 chord, and you can dial in dominant 7 chords, and that kind of chord occurs on the 5th degree. So in a major key, first chord, fourth chord, and fifth chord are always major. First and fourth could be a major 7 if you wanted to do something a little bit more flamboyant than just a regular major chord, and the fifth chord is major or a dominant 7 type chord if you wanted something that sounds a little bit more interesting. So just some ideas. Music isn't just about learning other people's chord progressions and going off and playing them. It's about kind of getting into understanding what it is that you're playing, so you can take those ideas and take them beyond where you found them. Be creative, write your own chord progressions. Even if you just take a progression that you know and just rearrange the chord order to come up with something new, or find different ways of playing it. You know, if you're playing as a strumming pattern, then change and try picking out individual notes from the chords, play as little arpeggios, just to be creative and come up with something new. Music theory is huge. It's not something I can just kind of sum up in one video, but hopefully I've been able to show you some ideas here and give you a little bit of information about the kind of chords that we're playing, how they relate to each other, and you can take that and use it to come up with some chord progressions of your own. So please, be creative. Don't just take a chord progression that I've shown you and just that's it, that's the finish of it. It shouldn't be. It should be a springboard that, having learned that, you can take the ideas and make them into something else. I'm a great believer in being creative and coming up with your own ideas. Okay, I hope you found that useful. If you did, please click like down there. If you really enjoyed it and you want to see other videos that I post on the channel, then please click subscribe also down there. You're welcome to leave a comment, but if you do, I'm not guaranteed to see it. I don't always see comments that are left on YouTube videos. So if you've got a specific question that you want to ask me, whether it's about playing guitar, music theory, guitar equipment, anything at all, you're better off going here, filling that form in and sending your question in that way. That way I'm guaranteed to see it and I can get around to answering your question in a future video. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.